Welcome to the Daily Current Affairs by Civic Center IAS, where we'll try to discuss the top 10 important topics for UPSC CSE Prelims 2025 from the Hindu, the Indian Express and the PIB. Displayed are the list of topics which we have chosen for today's discussion. The first article of the day says that PM-KISAN, which is a farmer-centric digital infrastructure, has ensured that the benefits of the scheme reach all farmers across the country without any involvement of the middleman. Furthermore, maintaining absolute transparency in registering and verifying the beneficiaries, the Government of India disbursed over 3.46 lakh crore in 18 installments so far. In this context, we'll talk about the PM-KISAN scheme. We'll look at its features and all. So the PM-KISAN scheme supplements the financial needs of the landholding farmers across India by offering direct financial support to help with agricultural inputs, and it plays a crucial role in improving the livelihoods of small and marginal farmers in the country. Furthermore, the PM-KISAN is a central sector scheme launched on 24th February of 2019 to provide financial assistance to landholding farmers across India subject to certain exclusion criteria. Now, if we have to look at the key features, firstly, Rupees 6,000 is transferred annually in 3 equal installments of 2,000 rupees each to the farmers. Furthermore, the funds are transferred directly to the Aadhaar-seeded bank accounts of the farmers through the direct benefit transfer, ensuring transparency and eliminating the middleman in the middle. Then, you have to know that a farmer-centric digital system has been implemented for the transparent registration and verification of the beneficiaries, ensuring that the benefits reach the targeted farmers effectively. But certain categories of the farmers are excluded from receiving the benefits under PM-KISAN, which are the institutional holders, former and current holders of constitutional posts, and then former and current ministers, MPs, MLAs, mayors, and chairpersons of district panchayats, and then serving or retired officers and government employees like the central and the state government employees, including PSUs and autonomous bodies. Then superannuated pensioners receiving 10,000 rupees or more in monthly pension. And lastly, income tax payers from the previous assessment year. The second article of the day says that according to the data obtained from various ministries by the Indian Express, through separate R2I, RTI applications, the PLI schemes have created 5.84 lakh direct jobs till June 2024, which approximately is 36% of the total 16.2 lakh direct jobs targeted to be created over the next 5 years or so across the 14 sectors. In this context, we'll talk about the production-linked incentive scheme. Firstly, what are the objectives of the scheme? See, firstly, to boost the domestic manufacturing and reduce the import dependence. Secondly, to provide incentives on incremental sales of domestically manufactured products. And lastly, to attract the foreign investments and encourage local industries to expand manufacturing. Now, why is this scheme significant? See, this is significant because it promotes a Make in India initiative by focusing on the key sectors. Then it addresses the India's trade deficit and enhances global competitiveness. And lastly, it generates employment by focusing on labor incentive sectors like the electronics, pharmaceuticals, garments, and leather. Now, these are all now keeping the view of the India's vision of becoming Atmanirbhar. This production-linked incentive schemes for 14 key sectors have been announced with an outlay of 1,97,000 crore rupees to enhance India's manufacturing capabilities and exports. So the 14 key sectors are the following mentioned here. Now, if we have to look at the key features under the scheme, so firstly, incentives are offered under the scheme. So for the electronics, incentives of 4 to 6% for manufacturing of mobile phones and components. And with respect to pharmaceuticals and medical devices, incentives linked to incremental turnover for bulk drug production and medical device manufacturing. But for this, the companies must commit a government prescribed minimum investment infrastructure and manufacturing capacities. And furthermore, the incentives are offered for a specific period, decreasing annually to encourage long-term sustainability. Now, why is this production-linked incentive scheme needed? See, firstly, the government lacks the resources for sustained investments in capital incentive sectors. Then secondly, to attract the global players with capital to establish manufacturing units in India. And lastly, priority to be given to labor intensive sectors like the garments, then the leather, electronics, and pharmaceuticals to boost the employment. Significantly, it aligns with the World Trade Organization commitments to ensure non-discrimination between the domestic sales and exports. The third article of the day says that the Union Minister for the Environment, Forest and Climate Change informed the nation about the notification of the Ratapani Tiger Reserve of Madhya Pradesh as the 57th Tiger Reserve of the country. In this context, we'll talk about it. See, situated in Raisen and Sehor districts of Madhya Pradesh, it spreads over 825.90 square kilometers. Know that this rocky forest with aquatic environment is spread on the Vindhyan Hills. Notably, it runs parallel on the northern side of the Narmada River. And furthermore, the Kola River, whichever is there, it forms the western boundary of the sanctuary. Significantly, the sanctuary has Bhimbetka, which is a group of rock shelters and rock paintings, which is one of the World Heritage Site declared by the UNESCO. Furthermore, it also encompasses many other historical and religious destinations like the Ginorgar Fort, POW Camp, Keri Mahideo, Ratapani Dam, Joliapur Dam, etc. Now, if you have to look at its landscape, it is rugged with hills, valleys, plateaus and plains. Talking about the flora in the sanctuary, the forest of this sanctuary is of dry deciduous and moist deciduous types. So, about 55% of the area is covered by teak. Then, the remaining mixed forest consists of various dry deciduous species. Now, talking about the fauna in that sanctuary, it comprises of tigers. Then it has chinkara, which is an endangered species also found in the sanctuary. And then it is home to animals like panther, hyena, jackal, Indian fox, wild dog, jungle cat, small Indian civet, blue bull, chinkara, etc. Now, if you have a look, these are the other tiger reserves in Madhya Pradesh. The next article says that 40 years after the Bhopal disaster on December 2nd, 3rd of 1984, several hundred tons of the toxic waste still remain around the ill-fated Union Carbide plant. In this context, we'll talk about it. See, on December, what happened? What was the incident of this global disaster? See, on December 2nd, 3rd of 1984, water entered a tank containing methyl isocyanate at the Union Carbide plant in Bhopal, triggering a chemical reaction. So, MIC vapors escaped, causing a disaster that affected thousands of it. Now, what are all the toxins associated with the disaster? So, firstly, we have the methyl isocyanate, which is highly toxic. It reacts with water, releasing the heat. Furthermore, the exposure causes irritation to eyes and in higher concentration can lead to severe health effects. Then we have other chemical pollutants which included heavy metals like the mercury, chromium, copper, nickel and lead. Then other organic compounds like the hexachlorobutanediene and chloroform, carbon tetrachloride, trichlorobenzene and persistent organic pollutants. Now, talking about the health and environmental impact of these chemicals, firstly, with respect to the heavy metals, if we talk about mercury, it accumulates in the tissues, damages the organs, and then impairs the cellular function. Then the chromium, which is a long-term exposure, is genotoxic and linked to lung cancer also. Then thirdly, we have lead, which disrupts the photosynthesis in plants, damages the cells, and then causes cancer also. And lastly, we have copper, which damages the liver, kidneys, and gastrointestinal systems. Then what about the effects of the organic pollutants? Firstly, we have the hexachlorobutadiene, which is possible carcinogen, affects the liver, kidneys and brain. Then the chloroform affects the central nervous system and is a potential carcinogen. And thirdly, we have the carbon tetrachloride, which causes liver damage and is an acute toxin. Then we have the trichlorobenzene, which is volatile, damages the liver and kidneys and accumulates in the fatty tissues. And lastly, we have persistent organic pollutants, which are persistent in the environment, can cause cancer, immune disorders, and reproductive issues. The next article says that Center has no role in Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme job card deletions, according to the Union Rural Development Minister. Furthermore, the response was to the oral questions during the question hour in the Lok Sabha. In this context, we'll talk about the scheme. See, MGNREGA is one of the largest work guarantee programs in the world, launched in the year 2005 by the Ministry of Rural Development. Significantly, the primary objective of the scheme is to guarantee 100 days of employment in every financial year to adult members of any rural household willing to do public work related unskilled manual work. Know that the Panchayat Raj institutions will implement the program. Notably, the person days under MGNREGA are defined as the total amount of the work days by a person registered under the scheme in a financial year. Now, there are two primary objectives of this scheme. The first one is to enhance the livelihood security of the rural poor by creating wage employment opportunities. And secondly, to develop a rural asset base to boost productive employment, augment the household income, and sustain economic well-being. Now, what about the key features of the Act? See, this Act guarantees a legal right to employment for the adult members of rural households, with at least one third of the beneficiaries being women. And secondly, it also provides unemployment allowance. So, if work is not assigned within the 15 days, the applicant is entitled to receive an unemployment allowance. This allowance is 1/4 of the minimum wage for the first 30 days and a half for the following period. Furthermore, the Gram Sabhas recommends and oversee at least 50% of the projects. And lastly, the cost sharing between the central government and the states for wages, material, and administrative expenses is done. The next article says that the Union government on Tuesday notified the appointment of Justice Manmohan as the Chief Justice of the Delhi as a judge of the Supreme Court, who has been working as the Justice of the Delhi High Court. In this context, we'll first talk about the collegium system, its evolution, and then we'll talk about the appointment of the Supreme Court judges. See, if we have to talk about the evolution of the system, firstly, we had the first judge's case of 1981, where it declared that the primacy of the Chief Justice of India recommendation on the judicial appointments and transfers can be refused for cogent reasons. Furthermore, the ruling gave the executive primacy over the judiciary in the judicial appointments for the next 12 years. Then, through the second judge's case of 1993, the Supreme Court introduced the collegium system, holding that the consultation really meant concurrence. Then it added that it was not the CJI's individual opinion, but an institutional opinion formed in consultation with the two senior-most judges in the Supreme Court. And lastly, we had the third judge's case where the Supreme Court on President's reference expanded the collegium to a 5-member body comprising the CJI and 4 of his senior-most colleagues. Now, what about the appointment of the Supreme Court judges? See, originally the Supreme Court had 8 judges, which is 1 Chief Justice and 7 others. Then the Parliament has increased the number of the judges over time, so which made the current strength of the Supreme Court to 34, comprising of 1 Chief Justice and 33 other judges. Now, what are the qualifications for the appointment as a judge? See, according to the Article 124, Clause 3 of the Constitution, a person can be appointed as a judge of the Supreme Court if he or she is a person of the citizen of India, and he or she must have served as a judge of a high court for at least 5 years or 2 such courts in succession. Alternatively, must have been an advocate for the high court for at least 10 years or 2 or more such courts in succession. And lastly, must be a distinguished jurist in the opinion of the President. Now, moving on to talk about his appointment. See, the judges of the Supreme Court are appointed by the President under Clause 2 of the Article 124 of the Constitution. So, the President consults with the judges of the Supreme Court and High Courts to make informed appointments. The next article says that the Chief Justice of India, Sanjeev Khanna, recused himself from hearing the petitions, alleging that a new law dealing with the appointment of the Election Commissioner gives the central government a dominant role. In this context, we'll talk about the appointment of the election commissioners. See, the appointment of the election commissioners is governed by the Article 324 of the Indian Constitution, which vests the power of the superintendence, direction, and control of the elections in the Election Commission of India. So, the Chief Election Commissioner and election commissioners are appointed by the President of India. If we have to look at the appointment process, see, the Chief Election Commissioner and the other election commissioners appointment, conditions of service and term of office Act of 2023 outlines the current procedure for the appointments. So the President appoints the CEC and the ECs based on the recommendations of a selection committee, which includes the Prime Minister, a Union Cabinet Minister, and the leader of opposition or the leader of the latest opposition party in the Lok Sabha. Furthermore, a search committee headed by the Law Minister proposes a panel of the names to the selection committee, ensuring a thorough and rigorous selection process. The next article says that the World Wildlife Conservation Day, which is observed on December 4th, serves as an occasion to not only celebrate the country's rich biodiversity, but also evaluate if enough is being done to protect the critically endangered species that find a home here. In this context, We'll have a brief look at the India's rich biodiversity and the conservation challenges also. So if we look at the biodiversity of India, see, India occupies 2.4% of the world's land area, but harbors 7 to 8% of all recorded species, including 45,000 plant species and 91,000 animal species. And significantly, 4 of the 34 global biodiversity hotspots are in India, which are the Himalayas, Indo-Burma, Western Ghats in Sri Lanka, and Sundaland. Then, if we have to look at the biogeographic zones of India, see, India is divided into 10 biogeographic zones and hosts 8.58% of mammalian species, 13.66% of the avian species, 7.91% of the reptiles, 4.66% of the amphibians, and then 11.72% of fish, and lastly 11.8% of plant species. But what are the challenges to the biodiversity in India? Firstly, we have the human-wildlife conflict because of the population growth and the economic development, which exert the pressure on the natural resources, leading to habitat loss and conflict. Then there are 73 critically endangered species in India as of 2022. So the increase in the critically endangered species from 47 in 2011 to 73 at present is partly due to better monitoring. Then, with respect to the critically endangered species, of the 9 species of mammals considered critically endangered, 8 are endemic, which means that their habitat is limited to a small geographical area within India, which includes the Kashmir stag, the Malabar large spotted civet, Andaman shrew, Nicobar shrew, Namdapha flying squirrel, and leaf-nosed bat. And furthermore, the Great Indian Bustard is threatened by the power lines and insufficient conservations. Now, what are the observations we have made with respect to conservations? Firstly, the economic pressures like the industrial growth, mining, and deforestation pose significant risks to the wildlife. Then, the focus on the charismatic species like the carnivores like the lions, tigers, cheetah receive disproportionate attention due to their tourism appeal, while the lesser known species often lack adequate protection and awareness. So, this World Wildlife Conservation Day on December 4th is a time to reflect on India's biodiversity and evaluate conservation efforts for critically endangered species. And there is a need for balanced conservation, and the focus should be on habitat protection, mitigating human-wildlife conflict, and addressing lesser-known species needs. The next article talks about the Prime Minister's Internship Scheme, in short called the PMIS scheme, which was announced in the 2024-25 budget. In this context, we'll talk about it. See, the Prime Minister's Internship Scheme or the PMIS scheme was announced in that budget 2024-25 to provide internship opportunities to youth in top companies. Know that the pilot project launched on 3rd October of 2024, targeting 1.25 lakh internship opportunities for this financial year 2024-25. Now, what are the objectives of the scheme? So, first objective is to bridge the gap between the academic learning and industry requirements. And secondly, to enhance the employability of youth through training, skill development, and real-life work experience. Now, if you have to look at the key features of it, see, firstly, it targets 1 crore internship opportunities in 5 years, where the pilot project aims for 1.25 lakh internships in the financial year. Then, it is identified based on the average CSR expenditure and over the last 3 years, and the internship is provided in the top 500 companies. Furthermore, the companies are underrepresented sectors of areas may also join the MCA approval. Now, talking about its implementation, see, the entire scheme is managed by an online portal which is mentioned here. Now, as of now, 1.27 lakh internships posted by the companies and 6.21 lakh applications were received and the selection is going on. Now, what is the eligibility for the scheme? It is open to the youth seeking internships, and also the companies willing to participate can apply with the MCA approval. Now, if you have to look at the key benefits under it, the interns gain hands-on industry experience, skills training, and exposure to a real business environment. The next article says that the institutes under the Indian Council of Agriculture Research are working in the area of different cutting-edge technologies for the production and post-production agriculture technologies. In this context, we'll just have a brief touch upon all these things. So, the focus on advanced technology in agriculture by the ICAR institutes and government initiatives is to promote the adoption of drones. In this context, the key technologies in the agriculture are, firstly, vision-guided AI-enabled robotic apple harvester, Then secondly, visual and X-ray based mango sorting and grading system. Then thirdly, we have a sensor based monitoring system with blockchain for banana supply chain. Then IoT based real time intelligent monitoring and control system. Furthermore, real time fruit quality monitoring using digital twins and machine learning. And then PCM based vending cart for fruits and vegetables. And lastly, we have visible light induced photocatalytic reactors. Now, what is the role of drones in agriculture, or what are the advantages of the drones? Firstly, increased efficiency and cost effectiveness through reduced cost of spraying fertilizers and pesticides. Then high atomization reduces the fertilizer and pesticide usage. And lastly, water conservation through ultra low volume spraying. Then it also reduces the human exposure to hazardous chemicals, ensuring safety of the farmers. And lastly, it creates a direct and indirect employment in agriculture. And furthermore, we have the KISAN drones, where the financial assistance under the submission on the agriculture mechanization is going on, where we have the demonstration of drones on farmers' fields, then support for the individual drone ownership, and lastly, establishment of custom hiring centers for rental services. Now, talking about the Namo Drone Didi scheme, see, it is a central sector scheme launched for women self-help groups. Know that the total outlay of the project is 1,261 crore for the years 2023 to 2026. And furthermore, the 80% of the cost of the drone and accessories up to 8 lakhs per drone is given as financial assistance. Know that the target is to supply 15,000 drones, and in 2023-24, 500 drones are distributed by lead fertilizer companies. So, in this video, we have discussed 10 articles in total for today. We'll be back again with another video tomorrow. Thank you.